Our next speaker, I like to think of him as the Da Vinci of the CSS art world because I'm a big fan. If you have not, or if you're not seen or unfamiliar with his work, your mind will be blown. Anyway, I'd like to introduce Ben Evans to the stage. Please give it up for him as he will share with us the joy of CSS.
Hello. Yeah, obviously my name's Ben Evans. I'm not sure I'll live up to those expectations, but we shall see. So now it's time to relax. And I'm sure you've all been overloaded with all the information everyone's given you. So to let it all sink in, let's just take a break, sit back, enjoy a moment of mindfulness, calm with Bob Ross, if anyone can remember him. Unfortunately, he won't be doing it. It'll be me, which is a shame. So you've been learning all the fancy new technical stuff from everyone, and it's been blowing my mind. And yeah, so let's go back to basics and forget all that nonsense. Stick with moving divs around the page. So yeah, I'm Ben Evans. I'm a self-taught developer. Been mucking around with websites since about 2005. So I do this kind of thing. Let's start one you might be familiar with. So this is a landscape just drawn from a photo with pure CSS, no images. You can change the color of the sun to, I don't know, white. It'll make it nicely black and white. Or orange for a nice sunset, I would imagine. So basically all the colors are based on one color, and the lightened and darkened and desaturated or cycled around the color cycle with hues to change them. And so yeah, I like pushing CSS to the limits and see what it can do. Here's another drawing of mine of my daughter. This is a slightly earlier one. It takes a while to render because it's quite big. And one of my more latest ones, this one's huge. It took me a year to do. So there's the background coming in slowly. And there's the... So this one, I won't... Thank you. So yeah, most CSS art is copies of photos or things like that. I wanted to do something completely original. So this started with no photo, nothing, just drawn completely in. This doesn't exist outside this image. I had to learn Blender, how to come up with the concept of the robot thing, Hoover. I don't know what it is, vacuum. It was supposed to be like, I wanted to make this is how the future of the Earth might be with its trash everywhere. This is the pyramids with trash everywhere and the massive robot coming to hoover it all up. But then I showed it to one of my friends and he said, oh, so it's basically the story from WALL-E, isn't it? I thought, oh yeah, that's ruined it a bit. And if I'm not doing photorealistic ones, I like mucking around with what CSS can do without using JavaScript. So here's a fully working Mario, and you can even tickle his nose and he sneezes. Or you can move him too much and he gets a bit frustrated. So yeah, there's no JavaScript, that's all pure CSS. Or even I've made gallery to display some of my work. first-person gallery, so you can just scroll around, and you can zoom in by holding your mouse down, or you can double-click to go to the place. The double-click was quite fun with CSS. It's basically a div that when you click, it moves that div and then stays up there for the next click on the other div, which activates it. And you can even, there's lots of Easter eggs in this one, so you can click on, if I can remember how to use it, it's a while ago since I did it, you can click on the light switch and turns off all the lights. Or I even set up my own bubble page. So you can go away and buy all my prints on shower curtains and mugs. I thought it was an interesting idea to have a CSS drawing that's pretty useless, that's then converted back into an image and printed on a t-shirt. And last, I'll show you this one lastly. This one's a game I came up with. So you have to try and work out how to draw a lighthouse before the sun sets. I don't know if you can see the sun is slowly setting. So if you do anything in the air, it does a sort of treehouse kind of thing. And then if you do it from the ground, it turns it into buildings. So you can build up from the ground. It'll be completely different to what you've built from the top. And you can also do like arches. And then it's even got a graphics quality settings if your browser is a bit more limited. And yeah, I'll let you to play with that and see what happens when the sun sets. So let's go back to here. So how did I get to doing all this strange stuff with CSS? I started by, I've always messed around with, obviously, coming up with ideas in my spare time. And I've thought about writing a story. And I'm dyslexic, so I thought I'd like to push my own boundaries. I'll try and write a story. Being dyslexic is probably the hardest thing I can do. So then I thought I'd illustrate this story. And I was a bit lazy, and I couldn't be bothered to go and find a pen and paper. And I didn't have any drawing packages, so I thought, well, I've got the browser open, I'll just draw in the browser. And so I came up with all of this book story, and it animates as you read through the story. There's also sound effects, but I won't play those now. So there's an illustration to go with every chapter. And I did all this, and I got to the end, well, end of chapter 2. And I thought, I wonder if other people were interested in this yet. So I sent it off to a magazine called Codrops. And they emailed me back and said, oh, it looks like it has potential. So I thought, oh, that's a bit deflating. I thought it was quite good. So because this image, 2 of my characters, the one on the right is supposed to be Brian Cox, if you know him. Because of this image, I really enjoyed drawing that glass there. And I thought, right, I'm going to prove to Codrops that I can draw glasses because I enjoyed that one so much. So I got a glass, got some lemons, put it together, took a photograph, and drew that with CSS. So that was the first one I did. And then, so what is the point of this? There isn't really any point. You can't use them in websites very easily. They're too heavy on the browser. Obviously, a JPEG or a SVG would be better. But there are some points, other than that Lynn Fisher said, I'm sure you all know Lynn Fisher, in one of her talks, said you can't master something without knowing its limits. So I push everything to its limits as much as I can, and I like limits. So all this new stuff I'm hearing about, it's a bit, well, I like the old limits that I had. And is there another point? Yeah, it's fun to do and it's relaxing. And so, yeah, I think we should do some, and we can all relax and think about what we've learnt. I've put a link here to draw along. You can do. I don't think you'll be able to, but if you want to, you can give it a go. So let's see how we do this. So I like Visual Studio. It's my favorite thing. I could do it in CodePen, but there's no IntelliSense as far as I know, and I'm quite lazy, as I said, so I like IntelliSense. So this is what we've got so far. This is going to be, I've put in some evil JavaScript to make this appear on click. This is what I want to draw. This is what we've got so far. This, I'm sure you can work out, is the exact representation of the background. Nothing different about that at all. So I imagined moving all these things into, as you can see, can you see my mouse? Yes, you can. There's a sort of leaf here that if I do that, you can see I've made out of lots of divs, not very nicely. And there's a sort of lighter area here made out of lots and lots of box shadows. And over here, so there's sort of vague things there. So now we want to make it look a bit more like the image. So somewhere on the internet, I cannot remember who came up with this random generator, but I stole it. And I would like to say, if it's someone here, please come up and continue this demonstration, because I use it so much. So this creates random box shadows wherever you want them to be. So I've converted it quite a lot from the original. So this the first box shadow will be just the value of here. That's where it will. That's how many times they appear. And then the size of it and the texture color can also change between two colors if you're given these elements here. So there's going to be 20 of them. It's going to be about 70 wide, and it's going to be this color and that color. And I set all my colors up at the beginning, so I can limit my color palette, and I can also then tweak them afterwards to do the effect of switching the sun color, make them all hues and things. So let's put in these textures. I can't remember where I've put the none now, but somewhere. So here are those random textures. And of course, it doesn't work. So let's ignore that bit for the time being and come back to it. So the background, to make the background look slightly more like it should, we can blur the whole thing. So now it's starting to look a bit more like the original. Now, let's get started on some proper drawing. Let's start with a flower. So we need, so as a setup, I've sort of got used to doing these. So I do the font size as 1 vmin, which I'm sure you'll know what that does. So the minimum smallest size it converts to. So that means that all of these things are responsive, because we always know every measurement will be based on the width or the height, depending on which is smallest. And then because I'm just moving pretty much divs around as position absolute, I can just set the whole lot up as position absolute, top 0, left 0, and it's all the before and afters have the content. So that's pretty easily done. And then that's the image that we're looking at or drawing that won't exist when it goes into CodePen. So let's put in some flowers. So because we're not using anything sensible, we don't even use divs. We can just make up our own words. I like to keep things small, and so does the browser, obviously. So that I don't know whether it's true or not, but I feel that the less characters there are, then the faster it will be. So there we got a flower and an element. I call it U because it seems to be the smallest I can think of without having anything that might change anything. So we go to our flower CSS, and I've set up this quickly. So we start with the thing that all CSS artists start with, I think, and that is the background of red. And we need to give it a height. So let's see what we're going to draw. Let's draw this leaf here. So I'm going to guess that's a height of 20. I have no idea. I've not done this before. And we can obviously rotate it. So we can say it's a width of I don't know, 3. And that's probably going to just appear in the top. That looks about right, actually. Quite pleased with that. So now we need to move it. We could move them all into using top and left, but this way is slightly easier to write. So we put some of those in there, and we know we're going to rotate it, so we put that in, give it 0. We can take some guesses here. So I think the picture's 100 wide. So let's say 60 rem across and 60 rem down. And we'll come back to rotating it. So let's see what that is. Is it any close? It's quite close. So we need to move it left a bit and down a bit. Getting closer. We should rotate it a bit. And you can see this takes quite a long time. And I don't actually know if it's interesting to watch, but I'm afraid you're forced with that now. So there's a quick way of doing it as well. So you can inspect this, and we can move it here. Looks about right. And I can't believe I got the rotational mode right to start with. Looks like it needs to be a bit longer. Oh, too long. Okay, so let's say that will do. So now we can just copy all that. and put it back in here. At one point, Chrome introduced this new this thing into here, and it prevented me from copying and pasting it. It was such a nightmare. Because everyone loves copying and pasting, don't they? So that needs to go up one more pick. And now we need to try and get that rounded curve to it. So we are going to need to do some border radius. Let's think about this. So 100 at that side, no. Let's do 90 and 10 and 10 and 90, because we're going around in the strange way that CSS does it from the left. So that might give us a better shape. It's slightly better, but it's pretty rubbish. I've just noticed somehow we've got to invert it slightly, which is going to be tricky. We'll probably need to use 2 divs. So we're going to need to do this again to get it as a better shape. Probably should have started with something more interesting than a little leaf. So now, I think this one's 50. And it's basically just trial and error until you get something you like. And I think we might need a bit of skew as well. Skew Y minus 10 degrees. We need to move it one little bit left, let's say 0.5. Oh, it's not left, is it? So there we go, that's pretty much there. We need to work out the color now. So the background isn't going to be red, unfortunately. It's going to be a linear gradient, and we can cheat by using this tool up here. So we pick this color here. We add this to our setup that we can deal with later. And we need the other color. Try and get the darkest spot. Let's just call it L to save time. Linear. So it's going to be sideways, so 90 degrees, and it's going to be, what do we call it, L1 And I can't remember if it has a comma there. Does there have a comma there? I can't remember. L2. So there we go. That's looking a bit more like it. I think it needs a bit more skewing. And it's still a bit fat. And we could do a bit of highlight on this edge here. So we can do an inset box shadow. Which is going to be like one rem. It's going to be one rem. It's going to be too much. Let's try it anyway. One rem. We want a tiny bit of dithering, so we say 0.1 rem. And we want it, oh, that's fine, isn't it? So now we just say white. Have we got a white that we're using already? Let's go to setup. And we haven't got a white, but we say B7. See if that's light enough. There you go. It's looking close-ish. Obviously needs a lot more work. Now, is anyone actually going to do this? I mean, it's fun. And you can see it's very relaxing and it passes the time. I usually do about half an hour a night, something like that. And as I said, that some of them where did they go? Some of them took a year. But that was mainly because I had to learn Blender. And Blender's quite fun to do if you didn't ever want to learn that. And some of them I've learned are too browser heavy, and you should probably limit. Like the first one I did, the glass, was quite a happy medium. I was tempted to do because the glass was actually on a wooden table, and I was tempted to do all the wood grains in the table, but I thought I'll just put it out there as it is, and I think that was a good place to stop actually, because it was quite enough for browsers, and some of these are too much. So let's go back to doing a bit more of this. So yeah, I've spoke about being lazy a lot, and laziness isn't a bad thing. I think we should all embrace it, because like if you think about all the things that are lazy, like cats, they're cool, they're lazy. Sloths, they're cool and they're lazy. And rivers are actually literally cool, except for on hot days. And they're really lazy because they just go where they need to. They do it really efficiently. They get it done. And if they've got like a flat bit, they can just have a nice little meander around. And actually, everyone is inherently lazy, because it's how we save energy. And I think it's good to conserve energy. And actually, browsers are quite lazy as well, if you think about it, because browsers like to read the smallest code as possible and not try and do too much like these kind of things. And actually, another word for laziness is just efficiency, really. And so lazy people are super efficient. So lazy people have come up with amazing ideas to beat laziness, like simple things like electricity. I'm not sure that was simple, but it seems simple now. Electricity, because they couldn't be bothered to go and get the candle and light it and all that, all the gas. And invented remote controls, because they couldn't be bothered to go to the television. They invented lifts, or elevators, because they couldn't be bothered to go upstairs. They invented smart speakers, because they couldn't be bothered to go and turn the volume up. And so pretty much all inventions come out of laziness. And I think Bill Gates has been misrepresented for saying this, but I think it was Frank Gilbreth Sr. who said, "I will always choose a lazy person to do a difficult job, because a lazy person will find an easy way to do it." So yeah, go out and employ lazy people. But actually, being lazy yourself is because everyone is lazy inherently. UX is a lot of thinking about what the lazy people will do, the path of least resistance. So don't put too many clicks in the way, and don't put something too far out of the screen reach. You have to think like a lazy person. So being a lazy person is actually really good. So yeah. Shall I try and put the stem in, or is it actually really boring? I don't know. We'll give it a go. So let's go. Background red. Left. Let's do with a trans. Which, if you care about how pretty your markup is, like I probably should, these should all be in order, but they're all a bit random to start with. And then one day I think I might put them in some sensible order, but I hardly ever get around to that. So this is a before class of this. I like to use as much of the element as we can. So this is the before of this leaf. So we already know that this leaf is over there and rotated. So this probably wouldn't be a very good place to start with a stem, but we'll give it a go anyway. So this stem is going to be a massive square block around here, which is probably, I don't know, I've chosen 7. Don't know why I did that, but we'll go with it. And we've got to rotate in the opposite way, and it's a bit more rotated opposite way than the other thing. So we're going to do 35, see if that, and we've got to unskew what we've done. And we haven't given it any height or width, so it won't be anywhere, will it? Width 10 rem, don't know, height. What was the last one? 20. It needs to be higher than that. It's 30. Let's see what that does. Oh, pretty ugly. So how come that wasn't enough? Maybe it just needs to be precisely 30. It's still skewing. Uh, 28. Okay, let's resort to doing it in the browser. Get my before. Give it a more sensible width. About right. And then move it up a bit more. Now, because we're from the original skewed thing, things get tricky. I probably wouldn't recommend doing a branch from a leaf. It's probably a silly idea. So the up and down are now skewed along with the leaf. So moving things into position get quite tricky, but we're not far off there. And also, I've just noticed this needs to go behind the leaf. So this needs to be a starting point rather than a finishing point. So let's copy what we've got there. And now let's bin all that because that was stupid. And you know, stupid ideas are fine. So now this one is 2. Oh, we haven't got a second. We need a second one of these. This one is 2. This one is going to be this bit without the other bit. And so we don't need this bit on this bit anymore. But actually, I've done it all completely the wrong way around again because the stem needs to be behind the leaf. So we make the stem 1 and the leaf 2. And now these need to be something similar to the places we had before, but -9. So 72 minus 9 is really tough for my brain. 70, 65-ish, I don't know. And then I can do that one. 67 minus 7 is 60. And this needs to be about 2, we've found out. And I don't think we're going to want to skew. So it's just a case, oh, it's all narrow now because of the lack of skew. So this needs to be minus, and this needs to be wider. Too wide. So yeah, I think I'll give up at that point. But yeah, I do this every evening. And just in case you're wondering what you can do with CSS, this PowerShell of a form presentation was, of course, all CSS. And another side project of mine is to try and make the smallest CSS carousel I possibly can. So here's a very basic working carousel with, that's the CSS for it there. 27 lines. I'm sure it could be minified. And then that's the HTML for it. No JavaScript. And I'd quite like to set the challenge if someone can beat that. Because it'll be interesting to find out. So yeah, that's me. Thank you very much.
Thank you once again, Ben. I'd like to invite you to the conversation corner. Plenty of questions for you.
Oh, good.
Because this is, I would say, not what most people expected, but very fun questions. First one out the gate. You said this is relaxing, but isn't it sometimes frustrating too?
Yeah, I don't know. It depends on how you look at it. It's challenging. I wouldn't say it was frustrating, but that's the fun of it. And that's why it's relaxing.
It's a matter of perspective, isn't it?
It's like doing a crossword. That might be frustrating, but it's also relaxing.
There you go.
Although I don't do crosswords.
I wonder why. Another question. This one seems very serious. It's a serious question. Why don't you make the photo you are tracing when painting as an overlay? Like maybe display it, then set the opacity to something less and move your divs around there.
Yeah, you can do that, but if you try and do that, you quickly work out why you can't do that, because you cover up what you're doing. And because I draw with because I like to click on the element, inspect it, and then drag it around using the inspection around with the dev tools, you can't do that if there's a photo in the way. So I've put a little bit of JavaScript in to put the photo there when I need it. And you can't get the colors right as well if it's semi-opaque. So it's a lot easier just for it to be there on a click and away on a click. That's why.
Mystery solved, my friends. Someone asked, do you draw or paint on pen and paper, though?
I do, yeah. If you look at I used to. This has kind of overtaken all that. Although I did a painting last year for someone. But yeah, obviously I started out as an illustrator before the internet was kind of a thing. And I didn't really know, I enjoyed illustration, but I also really enjoy making things. And so I gave up my illustration course and I went back to do a foundation course and did sculpture, because I thought maybe I like making things rather than drawing things. And I didn't really get into that either. So I just worked in a shop until they wanted a website, and I thought, I'll build your website for you. And that's how I got into web design.
Lovely.
And it fits both my needs. I can draw with it and I can build with it. And yeah, I'm a bit confusing to employees because I'm the designer and the front-end developer. So I have to have long conversations with myself.
I'm sure those are interesting conversations. Ruse asked, what did your first CSS drawing look like? It can't have been the lemon one. Was that the lemon one the first one?
No, it was this one. This story was my first.
This is an interesting question. How are you managing to live off your hobby? Do you even?
No.
Straightforward. Because this person goes on to say, I like doing what you do, even if they are not as good, but it's getting too expensive to reduce their work hours to do CSS art. Do you have any suggestions for that?
Yeah, be lazy. As I said, it's efficient. Do as much work as you need to, and no more.
I feel like that should go on a t-shirt. You should trademark that. And then you could probably earn some extra, so you have more time to do your CSS hobby.
But there is a thing to watch out for with that, because in your spare time, whilst you're relaxing, there are two forms of downtime. One is incoming. I can't think of the words now. I've got it written down. One is keeping yourself entertained by scrolling through Instagram or watching YouTube or trash TV, and keep incoming information flowing. But what we should be doing, and what we do less of now because of technology, is just staring at a wall and thinking, or having a nice walk. And because when nothing's incoming and your brain is wondering, that's when you come up with your ideas. Like if you go for a walk with no distractions, or have a bath, or stare at a wall, then you get creative. And I think we're missing that a bit by staring at our phones so much.
That's interesting. Because I think it's very interesting you brought that up, because I can relate to that in a slightly different way. I tell people that when I need to debug something at work, it's worse if I think about it. But if I do something mundane that engages your brain at a very low level, like washing the toilet, it actually works. You'd be surprised. I live with my sister. She's very happy when I have trouble at work because the house is very clean. Did you have a hard time today? So I definitely agree with that. This is a specific to the art. Why do you still use pseudo elements if the markup is allowed to stay totally non-semantic, like a flower element? It's like, why do you bother with another? Why don't you just use another tag?
Well, as you could see, sometimes it's well, I demonstrated it the wrong way around. Sometimes it's quite handy because you don't have to move it so much because the parent's already there and the before would be next to it already or on top of it. So you can think about how relative it is to it, and you can use that. Like drawing my daughter, each eyebrow, eyelash, each hair, it's a lot easier to use the before and after because that point is already there rather than starting again.
That makes total sense. So it's not completely arbitrary. There are reasons. But once again, give it up for Ben for blowing our minds.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.